It was the first step in a nuclear nightmare. As far as we know at this hour, no worse than that. But a government official said that a breakdown in an atomic power plant in Pennsylvania today is probably the worst nuclear reactor accident to date. There was no apparent serious contamination of workers, but a nuclear safety group said that radiation inside the plant is at 8 times the deadly level, so strong that after passing through a 3-foot thick concrete wall, it can be measured a mile away.
3 Mile Island is the name that still makes people think of flashing panels, frantic decision-making, and the 1979 partial meltdown that turned a Pennsylvania plant into a national warning label. For decades, the story has been told like a whodunit, with everyone from the operators to the reactor builder being treated as the prime suspect. The tricky part is that the incident was not one clean failure. It was a pileup of equipment behavior, confusing signals, and human choices made under stress, which is why different players could point fingers and still sound convincing. Now that 3 Mile Island is back in the news again, the old argument is resurfacing with fresh urgency. Today, we're going to sort through the admissions, the design quirks, and the operational missteps to finally spell out who is to blame for the 3 Mile Island incident and why the answer still gets people arguing decades later. How the accident unfolded.
The accident occurred here at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant a dozen miles south of Harrisburg. At about 4 o'clock this morning, 2 water pumps that help cool reactor number 2 shut down. Officials say some 50 to 60,000 gallons of radioactive water escaped into the reactor building, and that the radioactivity penetrated the plant's walls.
Workers were transferring radioactive cooling water from one holding tank to another when a valve opened, releasing radioactive steam. Throughout the day, chaos and confusion reigned as monitors tried to determine exactly how much radiation was released. But at a news conference early this afternoon, Governor Thornburg suggested pregnant women and preschool children within a 5-mile radius of 3 Mile Island leave the area.
Having a man open the valve to release the trapped gas is impossible. Heat and radioactivity would kill anyone making that attempt.
In the early morning of March 28, 1979, 3 Mile Island Unit 2 suffered a loss of cooling that escalated fast. A small malfunction set off alarms, automatic safety responses, and a blizzard of indicators that were not easy to interpret as one clear story. One of the most infamous problems was that a relief valve could stick open while the control panel suggested it was shut. That kind of mismatch tempts people to act on what they think the plant is doing, not what it's actually doing. As operators tried to stabilize conditions, key decisions were made in minutes. Some actions that seemed logical in the moment reduced cooling when the reactor needed it most, and the situation slipped towards a partial meltdown. That sequence is why blame arguments never land on only one person. A nuclear accident is rarely one mistake. It's usually a chain where equipment behavior, training, and human judgment all take turns pushing the story in the wrong direction. Babcock and Wilcox draws a line.
I don't know why we need to tell you each and everything that we do.
They've heard so much contradictory technical jargon from officials that the first casualty of this accident may have been trust.
We are concerned, though, about the status of the fuel in the core. There's extensive fuel damage.
Basically, they just lied. They didn't call anyone, actually, for hours. And then they kept insisting that it was just a stuck valve and they would fix it and there was no real danger.
In June 1979, officials from Babcock and Wilcox, the company that built the reactor, insisted they were not at fault. Their nuclear division vice president, John H. McMillan, said, quote, "We don't believe we have blame in the 3 Mile Island accident. We believe was the actions of the operators." Yet, even while pointing at the utility and the crew, Babcock and Wilcox acknowledged something important. They admitted that at least one valve tied to their equipment, quote, had not worked properly. And that matters because it means the chain did not start with a human hand. McMillan also conceded a training weakness that sounds small until you realize how nuclear emergencies actually behave. Quote, "On hindsight, we should have trained operators in multiple failures," he said. So their public defense contains its own clue about blame. If equipment misbehaved and the training did not prepare people for stacked problems, then calling it only operator actions does not tell the whole story. Design choices that invite mistakes.
I believe at this point that there is no cause for alarm nor any reason to disrupt your daily routine, nor any reason to feel that public health has been affected by the events on 3 Mile Island.
In fact, the reactor fought back, tried to shut itself down completely as it approached that dangerous low power state. The operators took steps to keep it running at a lower power, pushing that edge because they had been told.
Babcock and Wilcox highlighted control room design issues that made the incident feel like a setup for confusion. In a simulator, they showed reporters, valve status lights were color-coded opposite a traffic light. On the panel, red meant open and green meant closed. Under stress, that reversal can slow recognition, especially if you're juggling alarms, phone calls, and competing instructions. It's not proof that a crew caused the accident, but it is proof that the interface was not built around human instinct. The company also noted that some valve control buttons were not covered, quote, as they are on other control panels. That meant valves could be opened or closed accidentally just by bumping controls, even by leaning an elbow in the wrong spot. McMillan stressed that the control room at 3 Mile Island had not been designed by Babcock and Wilcox, but by the overall plant contractor, the engineering firm of Burns and Rowe. That detail spreads responsibility outward from one company to a whole chain of contractors and design decisions. Where the utility still owns responsibility.
There is no imminent danger. That's the official advice tonight, but many people aren't buying it.
Even with design and training problems in the background, the Metropolitan Edison Company still ran the plant and owned the day-to-day decisions in the control room. It hired the operators, wrote procedures, and set the culture of how to respond when the situation stopped matching the manual. The accident exposed a gap between learning systems in isolation and facing a fast-moving emergency where several things go wrong at once. When one indicator is misleading and alarms keep stacking, people can latch onto the wrong explanation and then make reasonable moves that deepen the trouble. That's why operator error is both true and incomplete. The operators did make choices that worsened cooling, but they made those choices inside a system where at least one valve malfunctioned and where control room cues could steer them toward the wrong mental picture. Put together, the cleanest answer is shared blame with a clear center. The utility owned the actions in real time, while equipment builders and plant designers owned parts of the environment that made those actions harder to get right. In other words, the operators were the last link in a chain that had weak spots earlier on. Backlash, training, and today's restart plans.
Meantime, the Trump administration is going to provide Constellation Energy with a $1 billion loan to restart the Crane Clean Energy Center nuclear plant. That's in Pennsylvania. The site was formerly known as 3 Mile Island, Unit 1. It stopped operating in 2019, but last year Constellation unveiled plans to rename and restart the reactor through a power purchase deal with Microsoft to support data center demand. It's expected to begin generating power in 2027. That reactor sits on the same site as 3 Mile Island, Unit 2, which partially melted down, quite famously, in 1979.
The comeback of this plant, the comeback of the industry, it's just kind of amazing.
32 years later, there's absolutely no medical or scientific evidence that shows that anyone outside the plant was harmed.
Cultivated the standards. It created the training programs. You can't change the page on what happened in 1979, but we actually changed the page on how we operate plants for the last 30-plus years now since that accident.
After 3 Mile Island, the blame debate became political at lightning speed. Consumer advocate Ralph Nader urged dismantling the nation's atomic power plants, quote, as fast as is technically feasible, arguing that the cost would be a cheap price compared with the risk of catastrophe. Inside the industry, the talk quickly turned to fixes. Babcock and Wilcox said it had changed some operating procedures and equipment. It also noted that 175 operators from various utilities received simulator training at its Lynchburg facility in the 2 months after the accident. Fast forward, and the site is no longer just a historical symbol. A 2025 report described the U.S. Department of Energy offering a $1 billion loan to support restarting the remaining reactor at 3 Mile Island. This is under a plan for Constellation Energy to bring an 835-megawatt unit back online. That same report said the unit, now renamed the Crane Clean Energy Center, is slated for a 2027 restart under a 20-year agreement to supply power from Microsoft data centers. That modern reboot is why the old blame question has returned. because a plant can be revived, but the 1979 incident still shapes how people judge every promise of safety. Even the language about reliable power now comes with a shadow of what happened the last time things went sideways. Now it's time to hear from you. When you weigh the evidence, do you blame 3 Mile Island mostly on the operators in the moment, the utility that ran the plant, or the designers and builders who shaped the controls and training that made confusion more likely? Let us know in the comments section below.